What if I'm not built for the front lines? This is a question that's been cropping up in a lot of my circles lately, and looking at the future ahead of us, it is a really valid question. Now, I'm somebody who loves to think about ecosystems, particularly the necrobiome, which is the ecosystem that surrounds death and decomposition. It's this complicated, complex, messy place where life and death are inextricably intertwined, and where some of the planet's most humble and disregarded creatures do the really critical work of transforming death into life. And if we think of revolution as being an ecosystem of transformative change, what are we doing if not composting a dying world? And if we think of revolution as an ecosystem, we recognize that there are all different kinds of creatures with different roles to play. Each role is individually insufficient, and yet because they are all interreliant, they are all collectively required for the survival of the whole system. And so I created a little map of the different types of roles that are going to be necessary, both in our present and in our future. And my hope is that maybe you will find one that you identify with and that suits your nature and your skill set and your resources so that you can find your place in the ecosystem. The first one, which is going to be most similar to being a frontline person, I am calling the offender. We are going to need people who are able and willing to be arrested. But this is not a role that is right for everyone. If you are a single parent, if like me, you are physically disabled, or maybe you have a job that allows you access to certain kinds of information, this might not be the right role for you. The next role I call the defender. These are people who are going to be comfortable moving through violent circumstances, but with a more de-escalating focus. I run a small business and a community space in a rural county where we center marginalized people, and sometimes I worry about our safety. And I'm really grateful that I know that there are people in our community that I can call upon if we need support. The next role I am calling a tender. I remember having a conversation with someone where I said, thank God the revolution needs childcare. It also needs grief support. It needs gardens. It needs community meals. It needs systems of community care. And for myself, this is one of the roles that I most identify with and I am most resourced to provide. The next role I am calling the mender. We're going to need people who can help us fix our cars, who can sew. And we are also going to need people who can repair relationships. We need people who have conflict resolution and mediation skills. There are going to be times when we disagree. There are going to be people who have complex relationship histories. And those things are going to need to be supported in community. The next role I am calling the pretender. I think an underappreciated and underestimated role is the people who can move through mainstream and normative society without really catching attention. These are the people who can access, share, and hide information, people, and resources. And it's really critical that they are able to move without being noticed. The next role I'm calling the connector. These are those people who always seem to know the person that you need to talk to. They help move materials, resources, information where it needs to go. And finally, the last role that I've identified, I'm calling the upender. And these are the people who can radically change your understanding of the world that we currently live in and the world that could be. These are the communicators and the visionaries and the artists and the activists of the radical imagination. These are the people who are going to illuminate a path forward that is inspiring enough for people to want to create it. And these are going to be the people who spark and sustain a sense of hope for the future. So if you are somebody who thinks the front lines are not for me, I hope that that offers you a sense of place in the process. And I invite you to share in the comments what role maybe you identify with as we work to compost this world together.